Welcome back to another episode of Mission 309. Today, we've got a guest on who has a great organization that you have probably heard of. It is the United Way. This is the Pekin United Way we're going to talk to today. If you're not aware, the United Way gathers funds and distributes those funds to lots of other nonprofits. So there's lots of ways that nonprofits and organizations are supporting the community. So they've got a very unique way of helping the community by helping other organizations helping the community. So I'm very excited to uh, peel back the curtain a little bit and see exactly how they're doing it here in Pekin and who they're supporting and how they're kind of doing it. So without further ado, we'll bring up Heather Robertson.
Hey, Keith. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yeah, no problem. Well, like I said, I'm excited to hear a little bit more about the United Way, specifically Pekin, and what you guys are doing here. But first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I grew up in this community, grew up out in the country in between Pekin and Tremont, moved into Pekin in fifth grade. And so I went through Pekin schools, graduated from Pekin High School, went away to college in DeKalb at Northern Illinois University to study speech language pathology, and came back to serve our local school districts. Ended up after 7 years working in that field, ended up in ministry and doing some consulting with schools, and have just continued to find my way looking at how to best serve our community from a variety of directions. So I started here at the United Way in July of last year. And so I'm just getting ready to hit kind of that 1 year mark, and excited about the progress that we've been able to make, some of the new partnerships we've been able to develop and collaborations, and continuing to see how we can make the greatest impact in our community possible.
That's awesome. And I think I've known you for, probably about that year, maybe a little bit more. And I feel like I know you pretty well. That we're practically neighbors, but
We
I
are.
didn't know the whole speech pathology thing or that you were involved with the school district originally. I didn't know that. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and really one of the things that I think is unique now is, one of our key areas is education. And so I definitely feel like I get to bring a different perspective to that because I've worked on the other side, and have worked hands-on with the students who we now get to help provide support for in a variety of ways.
Ah, that's awesome. I mean, they're literally our future.
They really are.
you know, we were just kind of joking about getting old here just before we started recording, and it's like one of these days that's the generation to be taking care of us. So, we should be taking care of them right now, right? so
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so yeah, exactly. So like I said in the intro, a lot of people have probably heard of United Way, but some people may not really be that familiar with what United Way does. So who is United Way?
Excellent question. United Way started in many communities, including our own, as a community chest. And essentially, during the time when we were at war, people recognized that there were families who had needs that exceeded what they could provide. And there were other families who were that had more than what they needed. And so they took the abundance that their family had and tried to put it together into a community chest, with the idea that if we all give what we can and we put it all together, we could have a greater impact. And that eventually got deemed a part of this larger worldwide mission called United Way. And so it really happened because there were people who recognized that there were needs and recognized that they had more than they needed. And so how do we try to collectively put our generosity together so that we can have a greater impact than you or I could have on our own? So if you and I and all of our neighbors in between our houses, right, decide to care for our neighbors in this collective way, then we're going to have a greater impact than if you just put, say, $100 here and I put $100 over here, and no one's really taking a look at how do those dollars add up to have the greatest impact.
That's awesome. So I'm assuming, based on that story, that came out of World War II then?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that totally sounds like a World War II, like everybody rally around, the world and the war effort and community. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and
So
so some United Ways have been celebrating. I know the one in Springfield and the one in Peoria have just celebrated their kind of 100-year mark. So they preceded that time in having this community chest effort, whereas we started and were formed in the 1950s. And so it really, there's a lot of different stages that United Way has taken, and I think Pekin having its own United Way was a fresh thing in the 1950s, but I think we were a part of the larger Greater Peoria, Greater Area United Way before that, and decided there was really a need with our community, the size of our community, for there to be a group that was specifically looking at the needs of Pekin.
absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. So what exactly then? Obviously, you kind of outlined it a little bit with a community chest, but I'm sure that's pretty good analogy from my perspective anyway. But what exactly are you doing in that way today?
Excellent. Yeah. So really what it looks like now, it's really gone through a lot of iterations through the years. And we're in some ways kind of in this new stage of imagining and embracing our community in new and different ways. As obviously, I know we say this all the time, but the impact of COVID has given everyone fresh eyes, right, for what the world, how do we best serve as nonprofit organizations across the board. And I know you're so involved in a variety of different ways, and you've seen that
Definitely
across.
changes the way you look at things. That's for
It
sure.
it does. It gave us all a restart, and I think there's potential there that's really positive, particularly in our organization as we've tried to look at what are the needs and how do we best meet the needs. And so the way that we currently operate, we have a board of directors who they are made up of 15 people from across the community, across different fields, different perspectives. They cover our three focus areas of education, income stability, and healthcare. And so all of them have their eyes on a different aspect of that, maybe more than one, depending on how they're situated within the community. And once a year, we invite local agencies to nonprofit agencies to submit a grant proposal. And in that grant proposal, they let us know about programming that they're providing for the community. They talk about how many people they would be impacting. How are they collecting data to make sure that the programs that they're implementing are effective? How many staff people? How many volunteers? How many dollars does it cost to make that program run? And how will the dollars that we could potentially contribute impact this community in very specific ways? It has to address one of those three focus areas. It has to either impact education, healthcare, or income stability, or more than one. And an agency could actually apply for more than one grant because they might be helping, they might have several programs that align with our mission and our overall focus area reach. And so all of those grant proposals are getting submitted right now. We're actually right in the middle of receiving all those grant proposals. And then in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a meeting where for all day we sit in a room as a board and as a staff team and listen to the different agency leaders tell us about the work that they're doing, the impact that it's having, and how it aligns with those goals, what data they have to prove that it's working, and how their budget looks for the upcoming year. And then we'll come back to the table and the board will have a conversation around, okay, we have X number of dollars that we've raised through workplace campaigns, through private donations, through community events and fundraisers. And we have this amount of money to give to agencies. What are the greatest needs in our community? And how are we going to make sure that we help address as many needs as possible with the dollars that we have been entrusted and that are going to have the largest impact, both proactively and reactively? And so it's a little science and a little heart, as one of my other United Way leaders likes to say regularly. Right there's an
It's a good way of
element
putting
of
it.
it that you're really looking at data, you're looking at numbers, and then there's this other piece of it where you're saying, okay, now we have to take into account what we know about our community because we live here, we work here, we're raising kids here, and we know that my son's friend is struggling in this way, and how are the school districts able to meet that need? Are they able to meet that need, or do we need other agencies that can help support our school districts, support our hospitals, support our clinics, and help them to be as effective as possible?
Yes, there's definitely a lot of needs in the community. So, with that in mind, since you're going through this and you've been in this chair for almost a year, what are some of those needs in Pekin here specifically?
Yeah, I think right now one of the hot button topics that has been brought up in the city as a conversation is that there are a great deal of people who are experiencing homelessness in our community, and how to best not only provide support to help people as they're in that situation, but also how do we create ways to help people to rise up out of homelessness and to get affordable housing? How do we create access points? How do we make sure that people have the resources that they need? What are the root causes? And how do we help establish a better way to have access to the services that are needed? One of the constant conversations I find myself in is that we have a lot of needs in the area of mental health and substance abuse, and we don't necessarily have resources that are readily available, not only to the people who are struggling, but also to their families, to their children in particular. And we've seen an extreme increase in the number of kids who need support and who need advocacy on their behalf, who are going through the court system in a variety of ways, and who are in need of an advocate, a voice to help them get the help that they need and to have their voice heard in the courtroom. And so those are just a few of the pieces that seem to come up on a regular basis when you look at conversations across our community and how to help people have access to the support that they need, so that we don't continue to see cycles where there's just an inequity that hasn't been accounted for yet, despite so many efforts, and that really have to root out some of those pieces of the puzzle that we don't always talk about, because so often we're talking about, okay, how are we going to solve the immediate problem and provide emergency aid? And one of the big conversations is, that's awesome, and we have to do that, but we also have to start looking for ways to get at the root causes so that we can help prevent those cycles from continuing.
I couldn't agree more. I mention that quite often on my podcast on veterans issues. It's an issue, in the veteran community as well, with homelessness and substance abuse. And suicide. Same thing. All three are a problem in that community, and there's a lot of focus on all three of those. But what I talk about in there is we have to address what what happens to somebody that starts the cycle to get to that point. You have to address that. You have to fix that. It's just like, me being in real estate. Like, if you have water coming into your basement, you have to fix the reason the water's coming in the basement. You can't just keep
Right.
mopping it up because the water's going to keep coming. So, like, you have to fix the root cause. And you do have to address those issues, right? Like, you
Right.
have people do need food and shelter, and they need to, all those kind of things when they're homeless. They do need those as well, but you also have to be working on the back end to address those other issues. So I would wholeheartedly agree that there's a lot of needs there. And mental health, I personally think there's a huge lack of mental health providers for everybody.
Hmm.
Thank goodness we've come to a point in society where the stigma is changing,
Right.
but the lack of providers has not caught up, which is a
No.
problem. So, but that's just my 2 cents, and
And, and that's
I won't get on my soapbox on that one, but yeah.
It's so real. And there's not an access point. I think one of the creative pieces we've seen through one of our agencies is, how can we have triage in place so that some of those deeper need situations can be served by maybe an agency partnering with the school district, so that, school districts have counselors, but the expectations of the training for that counselor is a much more generalized field. They have to be able to handle a variety of issues. And so, how can we not say, okay, well, we just need to increase the number of people who can do the general work, but how do we really do that triage work to say, okay, when we have those more significant needs, we can come in and have someone who's there part-time who's addressing those needs, so that then this other person who's also there part-time can address the wider range and hopefully not get to that place where they need the higher level care. And I think that kind of creativity and collaboration is one of my favorite parts of this job. It's a piece that, you don't necessarily get to see as a quote unquote consumer, right? My kids go to school, and I know the part of the story that impacts them directly. I know a little bit more of the story because of my background working in public education. But ultimately, I get to see this different side now that says, hey, we're in this together and we really want to have the greatest impact possible. How can we learn from each other? How can we grow? How can we, okay, where are the gaps? Where are the places where we could be doing more? And I think that's one of the unique things about the United Way of Pekin. Oftentimes, the United Way is it's an organization that's doing the work of the fundraising and of the allocation of the funds in the best way possible, but you don't get to have the same level of interaction that I get to have with the community as a whole, because we are a smaller city, right? We're not the size of a Peoria, right? Or a Bloomington or a Springfield. And we get this incredible opportunity to really be getting a front row seat for what the needs are, and getting to influence conversation and even convene conversation is one of my goals for the year ahead. How can we be a convener of conversation where we bring like-minded people around the table, which has been our historical basis, right? And say, here's what I see. Okay, well, I understand you see it that way. Here's what I'm seeing over here. And really try to get creative together and collaborative to bring forward better solutions that allow us to get at those root causes and provide help as soon as possible.
There's no doubt about it. Being here in Pekin, whatever the population is now, about 33, 34,000, whatever. You're definitely a lot closer to the community and those organizations than you are in a larger community. So you definitely have I guess I'll say a front, more of a front row seat
Yes.
than you would if you were in a town even twice as big. So the application process and everything, all that stuff's going on now. When For other organizations who are not partnered or who are not in that, thinking ahead for next year, if they were looking to file, roughly when would that process start next year? When they would need to put those in,
Yeah, so
roughly.
we hear from agencies year round who are
Okay.
wondering if they could be one of our partner agencies. And so then we just kind of earmark that, and we sent out the applications at the beginning of March. So we give agencies about a month to fill out that application. And most of the agencies that we partner with are applying for grants on a regular basis. And so they're able to turn it around relatively quickly. It's kind of a fun time. It's my first time going through it from this end. And we're fielding questions via email, phone calls. I just went to a coffee meeting to help answer some questions about some of the budget elements that we're asking for. And so there are a lot of different pieces of the puzzle. It's a pretty thorough grant process compared to some of the other grant processes that people might go through. And that's because we really look at ourselves similar to what a financial planner would do with your investment dollars. We see ourselves in that same kind of a role for your charitable dollars. And so just like a financial planner is looking at investments across the board on a regular basis and asking hard questions about, what do we expect to see happen? We're doing the same thing. And so we take it really seriously, and our board takes it really seriously. And they're just a phenomenal team of people who are looking to do the best job they can, not only because we want to make sure that dollars are spent in the best way possible, but we want our agencies to get to do the best work possible too. We know the needs are immense, and we want to make sure that we're supporting them by helping them think through, have you looked at this idea? Have you thought about it from this perspective? Oh, we noticed that this didn't necessarily match up with what you were anticipating. Do you have any explanation for why that happened? And so we've been working on generating questions and trying to think through, how are we going to make sure that when we go through this process, that we have the best information possible to make really good decisions about how we allocate that funding. So So yeah, so as long as we've heard from someone by the end of February, we can include them in the next fiscal year grant cycle. So it isn't an ongoing. We commit to a year of funding, but we do keep a close eye on what is happening with each agency. So because we've committed to it doesn't mean that it's guaranteed. We do not give out all those funds like, here's your grant for the next year. We actually give out those funds on a monthly basis. And
Okay.
so the 15th of every month, we have allocations that go out just like a paycheck would go out, right? And it goes to those different agencies, and then they're able to use that to help fund the programs for the next month. And then they would get the next uh, increment of that financing, that support. And so that helps us have better accountability too, to make sure that we're keeping an eye on, if something's going on in the community and we say, hey, we know that we're giving X number of dollars to this agency to help make sure that people have access to this service. And all of a sudden we're hearing in the news or through phone calls or on Facebook, I'm calling and I'm not getting the help that I need, then we get to check back in with that agency and find out what's going on so that we can make sure that those dollars are going where we say that they're going.
Awesome. Well, you can't go wrong with checks and system of checks and balances.
No.
And yes, that's got to be a very difficult process to sit there and determine all that, to sit there and listen to all these needs. I think all of us, having lived in here in Pekin for 10 years, I mean, we pretty well aware of a lot of those needs that you highlighted. But to listen more in depth would be definitely very interesting. Um, just to see at a deeper level, what people are really going through. I think sometimes, I see it sometimes through my career going into people's houses.
Mhm.
You get a little bit different insight sometimes, and there are a lot of people struggling, and you see that in the school sometimes, and there's definitely a lot of needs in the community, but sometimes people may not necessarily see that. But you and your board definitely have a lot of work cut out for you just to
We
sort
really
through
do.
that. I can only imagine the mountain of data and information that comes through those applications. So,
It is a giant
wow.
stack of information that comes electronically, but then there's rubrics and there's planning meetings and question generation and thinking through, what are the questions that we have? And then we go through the agency forum, we come back, we discuss what we heard and what we saw and how we scored. And then we take a hard look at, okay, these are the dollars that we have to allocate and how are we going to make the greatest impact with the dollars that we've been given. And it is the board, I can't sing their praises enough. Their commitment and their willingness to show up for our community is truly remarkable, and we are so grateful. We've been in a process of building up our board. We had some vacancies that had been left open and got the opportunity to bring some fresh perspectives and fresh voices. And we just had a board meeting last week, and I remember leaving just charged with energy. I said that's my favorite board meeting that I've sat in yet, because there's so much momentum, and we're hearing people ask incredible questions and want to do such a wonderful job. And oftentimes I think sitting on a board, it used to be just kind of a perfunctory part of the work that we did, right? That's how you network, that's how you give back. And I just see this fresh wind and fire among people who really want to make a difference, and I'm really excited to get to be a part of it. We have a phenomenal board, and we're really grateful for the commitment that they make, because it's a huge commitment, particularly this time of year. I don't think anyone can really fathom what it is like to review the grants, to make the decisions, to listen to the voices. And you really have to look head on with what are the needs of our community in a way that you could, turn away from. When we're all just trying to do the best we can in our day-to-day lives. And so it is a gift, and it's a gift to know that I really serve with their direction, and that I get to hear what they're seeing and think about how that then drives the way that I spend my days. And then we get to celebrate the wins. And we've had several beautiful wins this year. So
That's awesome, and many more to come down the road. Um, so I also want to say I've had scrolling across the bottom your website there, so people can definitely go find more information there. But I also wanted to ask, what kind of events and things do you have, throughout the year for fundraising and other things like that. The fun things, so people might be able to come and enjoy events or support the United Way and maybe donate. Of course, obviously that's a big part to donate funds. You know, Nonprofits and support doesn't go without donations.
It doesn't.
There's my foot stomp right there. If somebody feels so inclined to donate some money, it's always a nice thing to do if you have a little couple extra bucks in your pocket. So, what kind of things do you guys have on the horizon or maybe planned for this year?
Yeah, so one of the big things in United Ways across the country is learning how to diversify the way that money comes in. So it used to be that we really relied primarily on workplace campaigns, and workplaces planned the events, and we just provided support however they needed us to. And as we've seen the workplace change, this is one of the things that is changing, right? Some
Changed a little
workplaces have
bit.
chosen to diversify how people can give. Some workplaces have decided that this isn't the best way for them to do collective generosity, and that they're happy to support people who want to give to United Way or to another organization, maybe with a matching program. But they're not going to run it through the workplace. And so that's had an impact on United Ways all over. And so one of the ways is to really look at more what are some event driven fundraising efforts that we could employ. So we have had a longstanding tradition of having a golf outing in the fall each year, kind of as golf season is wrapping up. And we are planning, that is on our calendar for this year. And so we're meeting with some of our local businesses to see if they want to be a corporate level sponsor for that right now, which is a fun process to get to go through because, people get to come out, they get to golf, have a good time. We have a raffle, we have some auction items, we have a great meal. So there's a lot of different ways that people can engage. So that's one of our long-standing traditions, in addition to our annual meeting, which is just a time to come together and celebrate the work that we've done, the people who have made a tremendous impact. So, but we're really looking at increasing that. And so one of the biggest wins in my first year here is that the high school actually started a basketball game that was in support of the United Way, called Supporting Our Dragons in a United Way. And they did a half court shot, and they did where you could shoot for a free car. We had some different cool raffle items that they were able to contribute, and that we were able to get some from some of the local businesses, as well as fun t-shirts for everyone to wear that we will continue to bring forward. And so that was a great time. It was so fun to hear all throughout the night, the announcer talking about United Way, everyone celebrating what United Way is all about, and getting to see the kids, the students, the cheerleaders had the t-shirts on, and everyone was really coming together to say, hey, this is our community that gets impacted when these dollars are raised, and we want to be a part of it. So that was a really great event. We're working on right now a special event for this summer, which would be a community picnic, and really a celebration of volunteers and a celebration of our community. And it would be right downtown on Court Street. And we're hoping to do it alongside another event that is in the works right now for Juneteenth, and to really bring together the community and to celebrate what community is all about. And so no better way to do that than with food, right? And a good time. So maybe
Yeah.
some games, and really just everyone coming together. And that won't so much be about raising funds, but raising awareness and helping people understand that the United Way is here not only to help support agencies, but to help our community to thrive in the best way possible. And so we are very excited about that. And then as we look ahead to the fall, we are hoping to do a murder mystery night, as well as some type of a runway show and a couple of other really fun events, just bringing people together. So we're trying to get really creative. We have an amazing events team that was formed since I started, and they have so many great ideas, and we're learning from surrounding communities. What are some ways that we could be reaching people that we're not necessarily doing right now, and also highlighting what a wonderful community we have.
Well, yeah, I'd say your events team definitely put some creative juices into it.
They really did. Yeah, they every time I meet with them, I just walk out and I think, okay, this is the work that not everyone gets to do. How lucky am I that I
Yeah,
get to
runway show,
spend time
murder
with amazing
mystery. I
people.
mean, community picnic. Hey, like you said, food downtown, summer. Like, what's not to like?
Yeah, and
A lot of
creating
great
some
things.
fun
Golf outing.
events for inside when we can't be outside in the summer, right? So how do
Well,
we bring
it is Illinois.
it is Illinois. The seasons are real. The
Hey,
seasons
to
are
say
real.
it, could snow, might not, probably won't, but it could. It's
But
Illinois.
Perhaps, if you say put the snow scraper away because you're certain it's the middle of March and you're not going to need it anymore, then for sure there will be snow on your windshield the next day.
So for the picnic, everybody bring out your snow shovels, and it pretty
Exactly.
much guarantee we won't have snow. Should be fine.
Exactly.
I
Yes.
almost guarantee it.
There
almost
you go.
almost guarantee it. So anyway, that's awesome. That sound like some amazing events. Hopefully, get some great turnout and some great support. Anything else that I missed that we should highlight about United Way?
No, I appreciate you highlighting our website. It does have an option on the website to donate, that comes directly into to helping us give out those agency allocations every month. So we're giving money away all year round, and we're so grateful any donations that come in year round, especially those unexpected ones that you don't necessarily see coming. The other thing is we do have a Facebook page, and oftentimes that's where we're highlighting some of the events that are happening and inviting people to contribute to be a part of that in a variety of ways. Our Facebook or our website also can give you some insight into who are some of the local companies that are really making a difference for United Way and our community as a whole, so that you can support those businesses and celebrate the work that they're doing and make sure that they know how grateful we are for the impact that we have. The other piece that I know we spend a lot of time talking about, education and some of those pieces, but one of the things I love about United Way is it really does reach all ages. So we support agencies that help people. You have the Miller Center on here. The Miller Center Transportation is one of the agencies that we've supported, and supports people from really birth to end of life, and tries to really reach and fill in the gaps, help support the needs of people of all ages. And so I think one of the things I love about it is, if you give $100 to the United Way, you're going to have an impact across all ages, across 3 different impact areas. You're going to know that those dollars are being connected to other dollars, and making an impact that way. And I think that really, when I only have so much to give, it's really powerful to know that the money that I'm giving is joining forces with other people from around my community who are also giving, and that together we're making a collective impact and providing collective care, which is really what our mission is all about. How do we provide collective care through generosity to our community as a whole?
Awesome. I want to add one thing when it comes to what you just said there of collective impact, because you mentioned website and donating. Some people may not be able to donate, but you mentioned social media. And I think it's really, really important
Mm,
that not everybody can donate, but almost everybody's on social media. So if you're watching this, take a moment and go follow Pekin United Way on social media. And
yes.
you know what? I'll say this for other organizations too. Any nonprofit that you follow, go follow them on social media. And when you see a nonprofit share something, it doesn't cost you any money to share it to your audience,
Yeah.
because you may not be able to physically support them with money, but you can share it, and you might have a friend or family member or somebody else who can. And that might lead to donations, and those donations are invaluable to supporting the community.
Absolutely.
So those shares are important. And so, there are ways to support without funds, but if you do have the funds, that is also really how things happen. So I wanted to make sure that we kind of threw that out there. There's multiple ways to help.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. That's such a great reminder. And the other piece of that too is, you might see something and think I can't give money to that, but I'd be willing to, come out and help. I'd be willing to set up tables for a community picnic. I'd be willing to help, provide maybe you have a small business that you want to highlight and you want to give a donation for one of our events so that we can let people know, hey, this is a small business that you can be supporting in the community. And so there's a lot of different ways that we can all work together. I thank you for that reminder. And that's why we use Facebook, right? Is because we realize that is an access point where people can be liking, sharing, commenting, celebrating the wins with us, and helping us make sure we're getting the word out over and over again.
Absolutely. So, Heather, I appreciate you coming on here and sharing with us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for what you're doing. I just think it's such a gift to celebrate the different people who really are trying to make an impact in this area together. I love Mission 309. It's just such a powerful title for this, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share our mission and our story.